The faces in the boardroom turned toward me with that mixture of pity and awkward discomfort that signals the end of a career. I stood frozen mid-sentence, my presentation on the massive display behind me showing 5 years of my research. The proprietary trading algorithm that was supposed to secure our fund's dominance in quantitative strategies. "I'm sorry to interrupt," Alexandra said, not sounding sorry at all as she strode in wearing a Chanel suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Victor's daughter had perfect timing as always, but there's been a strategic pivot. I watched her glide to the front of the room while my body went numb, fingers still hovering over my clicker. The 6 limited partners, who minutes earlier had been nodding along to my presentation, now straightened in their chairs, their attention completely redirected. "My father asked me to share some exciting developments," Alexandra continued, not even glancing my way. "We've developed an alternative trading framework that shows significantly better risk-adjusted returns." My throat closed as she pulled up her own presentation, effortlessly minimizing mine with a casual gesture that seemed to mirror what she was doing to my entire existence. The room's attention shifted completely as my work disappeared from view. "We don't need your models anymore," she said to me, her voice low enough that only I could hear as she passed by, then louder to the room. "Daniel's work laid important groundwork, but we're taking a more institutional direction." I stood there, invisible now, as she showed slides that looked suspiciously like concepts I'd discussed during late nights in the trading lab, concepts I'd never formally presented, but had written in my personal research notes, concepts that somehow now belonged to her. When she finished, the room erupted in applause. Montgomery, our anchor investor, actually stood up. "This is exactly what we hope to see," he said, beaming at Alexandra. "Much more scalable for institutional capital." I packed my laptop with mechanical movements as they discussed capital commitments and fee structures. Nobody noticed when I slipped my access badge out of my wallet and placed it on the table. I caught Victor's eye as I headed for the door. The managing partner, who'd once told me I was the future of his fund, now looked through me like I was already gone. "Enjoy the capital raise," I said quietly, my voice steadier than I felt. It was only when I reached my car that the shaking started. I gripped the steering wheel, trying to process what had just happened. 5 years of work, my innovation, my future, and most crushing of all, they didn't even need me to explain it. Alexandra had studied my work closely enough to present it as her own. I drove home in a daze, already calculating what I needed to withdraw before Victor realized what I'd done. I had 48 hours at most. 48 hours before the entire house of cards came tumbling down. The rain started as I pulled into my building's parking garage. Of course it did. The universe has a sense of dramatic timing. I sat in my car, listening to the rain echo against concrete, thinking about everything I'd sacrificed. The relationships I'd let wither, the holidays I'd spent backtesting models, the life I'd put on hold for a fund that had just thrown me away like a losing position. But as the shock began to fade, something else emerged. Not despair, not anger. Something colder, more calculated, a plan. Because here's the thing about being the only person who truly understands a complex trading system. You know exactly what pieces are essential, and you know exactly what happens when those pieces are removed. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this story, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support means everything, and I promise the revenge coming up is worth sticking around for. Drop a comment about what you think Daniel should do next. I love reading your theories. My name is Daniel. I'm not what most people picture when they think quantitative trader. I don't have a PhD from MIT or family connections on Wall Street. What I do have is an almost supernatural ability to see patterns others miss and the stubborn persistence to follow them to their conclusion. I grew up watching my mother work 2 jobs to keep us in a decent school district. Studying at the kitchen table after she fell asleep, I clawed my way through state university on scholarships and tutoring income. When most students were partying, I was in the library reading academic papers on stochastic calculus. Victor hired me 6 years ago, despite my unconventional background. Or perhaps because of it. Fresh perspectives create alpha, he'd said during my interview, seeming genuinely impressed by my self-taught approach to statistical arbitrage. For 5 years, I worked 18-hour days developing a trading algorithm that could revolutionize how hedge funds managed systematic strategies. It wasn't just a job, it was my life's work. The innovation that would finally prove I belonged in this world of Ivy League degrees and family money. Let me tell you what those 5 years actually look like. I arrived at 5 every morning, before the Asian markets closed. To review overnight positioning, I stayed until midnight, refining models that no one else understood. I spent weekends researching emerging market microstructure, reading academic papers, attending quantitative finance conferences on my own dime. My apartment became an extension of my workspace. 4 monitors on my desk at home. Servers running backtests in my closet. Whiteboards covering every wall, filled with factor models and correlation matrices. I sacrificed relationships. My girlfriend left after year 3, tired of competing with my Bloomberg terminal. My friends stopped inviting me to things. My family saw me at Thanksgiving. And even then, I was usually checking positions on my phone. But I believed it was worth it. I believed that the returns would speak for themselves. I believed that Victor meant it when he said I was the future of the fund. I was wrong about all of it. I never saw Alexandra coming. She arrived 11 months ago, fresh from London Business School, installed in the corner office with a made-up title, Head of Strategic Development. Victor introduced her with proud father eyes, telling us all how lucky we were to have her fresh perspective on capital markets. Let me tell you about Alexandra. She was everything I wasn't on the surface. Polished presentation skills, designer wardrobe from Bond Street, the ability to speak in buzzwords that made investors nod approvingly, alternative risk premia, factor rotation, regime-aware allocation. She'd never actually managed money, never stayed up until 4 a.m. during a flash crash, never felt the terror of a position moving against you while liquidity evaporated, never experienced the triumph of calling a market turn that everyone said was impossible. But she had the name. She had the access. And she had a father who would give her anything she wanted. I tried to be welcoming. I shared my research when she asked questions, explained my methodology when she seemed interested. I thought she genuinely wanted to learn. You're brilliant. Daniel, she told me once, leaning against my trading desk. But you don't understand how this industry actually works. It's not about the models. It's about the relationships. I didn't realize those words were both a warning and a threat. She started attending my strategy meetings. At first, I thought it was curiosity. Then I noticed she was taking notes, detailed notes. Not about the mathematics, but about my explanations of how the signals worked. She asked to see my research documentation. For learning purposes, she said. To understand the strategy better. I should have been suspicious, but I was flattered. The managing partner's daughter was interested in my work. Maybe this meant Victor was finally ready to give me the recognition I deserved. Instead, it meant I was being replaced. The meeting with limited partners had been scheduled for months. My chance to present directly to the people who controlled our capital base. Victor had personally told me to prepare, had reviewed my slides, had nodded with satisfaction at the returns I presented. Then, 5 days before the meeting, Alexandra started asking more detailed questions. She insisted on seeing my latest signal documentation. She wanted to understand the execution methodology more clearly. I opened the door to my apartment now, tossing my keys onto the counter and staring at the emptiness. My cat, Fibonacci, rubbed against my ankles. Sensing my distress, I picked him up, burying my face in his fur as the reality crashed over me. She hadn't just stolen my presentation. She'd stolen my future. By this time tomorrow, Victor would realize what I'd withdrawn, and then the real chaos would begin. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. My closest friend at the fund. What happened? Everyone's talking, but nobody knows anything. I stared at the message, unsure how to respond. How do you explain having your life's work ripped away? How do you admit you've just walked away from everything you've built? Before I could decide, another message appeared, this one from Victor himself. We need to talk. Now. I turned off my phone and opened my laptop instead. There was work to do. The next morning dawned with the artificial calm that precedes a storm. I showered, dressed carefully in my most expensive suit, and prepared for the confrontation I knew was coming. My laptop contained everything I needed, the proof that would either save me or destroy us all. When I arrived at the office tower, the security guard waved me through with a confused expression. "Thought you resigned yesterday," he said. "Not officially." I answered with a smile that felt like broken glass on my lips. The trading floor was buzzing with unusual energy when I walked in. Conversations stopped as I passed. Colleagues avoided eye contact. I walked directly to my desk and began gathering my personal items, ignoring the whispers that followed me. Rachel appeared at my side, her voice low and urgent. "Victor has been looking for you since yesterday afternoon. He's furious." "What did you do?" I carefully placed my coffee mug in my bag. Nothing he didn't deserve. "Daniel, this isn't like you. Tell me what's happening." Before I could answer, Victor's voice boomed across the floor. "Daniel, my office, now." The walk to his office felt like crossing a battlefield. Every eye tracked my movement, waiting for the explosion. Victor stood in his doorway, face flushed with anger. His Brioni suit somehow making him look more desperate rather than powerful. "Close the door." He barked when I entered. I did so carefully, then stood waiting. I wouldn't sit unless invited, a small act of defiance that I knew would register with him. "Where is it?" he demanded. I tilted my head slightly. "Where is what exactly?" "Don't play games with me. You know exactly what's missing. The limited partners are arriving in 3 hours for the final commitment ceremony. And suddenly, we can't access the core signal generation engine, the one you were responsible for." I let his words hang in the air between us, enjoying the way his certainty began to crack in the face of my silence. "I'm afraid I don't know what you mean," I said finally. "According to yesterday's meeting, you're going with Alexandra's framework instead. My models aren't needed anymore." Victor's face darkened. "Her framework relies on your signal engine, which is suddenly incomplete in our systems." "What did you remove?" I smiled then. The kind of smile that comes from knowing you hold all the cards while your opponent has just realized they're playing a different game entirely. "Let me explain something. Victor, when you hired me, I was naive. I believed that talent and performance would be recognized and rewarded. I thought loyalty meant something in this industry. Get to the point." "The point is that I learned. I watched how you operated. I noticed how credit for my returns mysteriously migrated to other names in investor letters. I saw how Alexandra was being positioned months before yesterday's meeting. The corner office, the strategic title, the access to my research files." His jaw tightened. I knew I was hitting close to home. "Did you think I wouldn't notice that I was too busy building models to see what was happening around me? I'm not blind, Victor. I'm just patient." So I took precautions. The trading system you're trying to demonstrate to investors has 5 core components: the factor scoring module, the portfolio construction engine, the risk management framework, the execution algorithm, and the proprietary signal generator. I paused, letting each component register. 4 of them are in your systems, documented and accessible. But the 5th, the signal generator that actually identifies the trading opportunities, that exists only in my personal servers that your fund has no legal right to access. Victor's face had gone from red to an unhealthy shade of purple. I could see the vein in his temple pulsing. "You can't do this. You signed an intellectual property agreement." "I did." "I also read it very carefully, which I suspect is more than you did. All work produced using fund resources during fund hours belongs to the fund. But the signal generator was developed on my own time, on my own hardware, in my own apartment, using my own proprietary data sources and my own original algorithms. I have timestamps, version control logs, and independent experts who can verify this. That's not possible." "You couldn't have known what? That you were planning to replace me with your daughter, Victor. You've been grooming her for this position since the day she arrived. Every meeting she attended, every document she requested, every question she asked about monetization. Did you really think I wasn't paying attention? He stood abruptly, sending his chair rolling backward. I'll sue you into oblivion. With what grounds I gave you 5 years of legitimate work product. The fact that it's incomplete without my separately developed component isn't a legal matter. It's a business problem. Your lawyers will tell you the same thing. And good luck explaining to the limited partners why you're suing your own former quant instead of generating returns. He was pacing now, running his hands through his silver hair. I made you. I gave you a chance when no one else would. This is how you repay me. You gave me a chance to work myself to exhaustion while you planned to replace me with your daughter. You let me believe I had a future here while she was studying my notes to steal my presentation. You owe me nothing. Victor. And now I owe you nothing either. His phone rang. He glanced at it, and his expression shifted to something approaching panic. That's Montgomery, he said. The limited partners are early. They want to review the live trading demo before the ceremony. I turned toward the door. Good luck explaining why your revolutionary strategy doesn't actually generate signals. Wait, Victor's voice cracked. We can negotiate. I paused, my hand on the doorknob. We could have negotiated months ago. When I asked for carried interest. When I asked for partner status. When I asked for the resources to build a proper research team. Every time. You said we'll discuss it next year. Now there is no next year. Daniel, please. There has to be something. I turned back to face him one last time. Actually, there is. When the investors ask what happened, tell them the truth. Tell them you tried to steal from the one person who could have made your fund successful. Let them know exactly what kind of fiduciary you are. The chaos that followed was almost beautiful in its inevitability. From the coffee shop across the street, I watched through the window as black town cars pulled up to the building entrance. The limited partners who had applauded Alexandra yesterday, now arriving for what they thought would be a commitment ceremony. I could imagine the scene inside. Alexandra trying to run the live trading demo, the system failing to generate signals, the model sitting silent while markets moved. My phone buzzed with increasingly frantic texts from Rachel. Something's wrong with the trading system. Alexandra is losing it. Victor just screamed at the entire quant team. They're trying to debug in real time, but nobody knows what's missing. The limited partners are asking questions nobody can answer. Montgomery just demanded a private meeting. They're walking out. What did you do? I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my laptop and reviewed the business plan I'd been quietly developing for the past 8 months. The plan I'd hoped I would never need to use. The plan that was now my only path forward. The first call came at 2 o'clock. Montgomery, the anchor investor, had somehow obtained my personal number. Mr. Daniel. His voice was carefully neutral, but I could hear the edge underneath. We need to meet. I'm afraid I'm no longer affiliated with Prometheus Capital. That's precisely why I'm calling. Can you be at our family office at 5? I pretended to check my calendar, letting the silence stretch just long enough to make him uncomfortable. I can make that work. The family office occupied a brownstone in the historic district. No signage, no reception desk, just a discreet door and a butler who led me to a wood-paneled library where Montgomery waited with 2 of his advisors. Thank you for coming, Montgomery said, gesturing to a leather armchair. I imagine you know why we're here. I sat, keeping my posture relaxed despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. I have some guesses. We just came from a very enlightening meeting at Prometheus Capital. Montgomery leaned back, his expression carefully neutral. It seems the strategy we were planning to allocate to doesn't actually function without your involvement. I nodded slowly. Alexandra's framework does have some dependencies. Dependencies that she failed to mention, or perhaps didn't even understand. He paused, studying me with renewed interest. Mr. Daniel. My family didn't build this fortune by investing in pretty presentations. We invest in strategies that generate returns, and from what we've been able to determine, the only person who can make this strategy work is sitting in front of me right now. I felt a smile tugging at my lips, but suppressed it. This wasn't the time for gloating. This was the time for negotiation. What are you proposing? We'd like to understand your plans. Do you intend to continue developing this strategy independently? That depends on several factors, such as capital, infrastructure, and most importantly, control. I've spent 5 years having my work stolen, my returns minimized, and my contributions erased. I'm not interested in repeating that experience. Whatever I build next, I need to own it, not just economically, but operationally. No managing partner's daughter showing up to take credit. No investor letters where my alpha becomes someone else's bullet points. Montgomery exchanged glances with his advisors. I could see them calculating, reassessing everything they thought they knew about this deal. What if we told you we were prepared to seed your own fund directly, not allocate to Prometheus? I'd say I'm listening. The negotiation that followed was unlike anything I'd experienced. At Prometheus, I'd begged for table scraps, a small piece of carry, a title that reflected my contributions, resources to build a proper research team. Every request was denied or delayed or qualified into meaninglessness. Here, I was being offered everything I'd ever wanted: seed capital for my own fund, a team of my choosing, complete investment discretion, economics that reflected my actual value. There were conditions, of course: high watermarks and hurdle rates, quarterly reporting, risk limits and drawdown triggers. But the fundamental terms were clear. They believed in my strategy enough to bet on it. Not because of my name or my connections, but because of my returns. By 7 o'clock, we had a preliminary agreement. $50 million in seed capital with performance-based additions that could take it to $200 million. I walked out of that brownstone feeling like I was floating. The city looked different from here. Not just geographically, but metaphorically. I wasn't working for someone else's fund anymore. I was building my own. The terms were better than anything I'd ever imagined. Full investment discretion, a real management fee, performance allocation that actually reflected my contribution, the ability to hire my own team, build my own culture, make my own decisions. Everything Victor had promised but never delivered. Everything Alexandra had tried to steal but couldn't understand. It was all mine now, and I had earned it, not through connections or pedigree, through work, through performance, through the stubborn refusal to give up even when everyone was trying to push me out. The hardest part came the next morning. I arrived at a small coffee shop near the financial district where Rachel and I used to meet before market open. She was already there, stirring her espresso with mechanical precision, her face a mixture of confusion and hurt. I sat down across from her. "I'm sorry I couldn't tell you earlier." She looked up. "Tell me what?" "That you were planning to destroy the fund, that you've been lying to everyone for months." "I haven't been lying. I've been protecting myself. There's a difference." "The difference feels pretty academic from where I'm sitting." She set down her spoon. "I've known you for 5 years, Daniel. We've worked together on everything. I thought you trusted me. I do trust you. That's why I'm here now. But I couldn't risk telling anyone before it happened. Not because I don't trust you, because if Victor had found out, he would have found a way to stop me, and I wasn't willing to take that chance." I took a deep breath, preparing to explain everything. "Rachel, 8 months ago, I discovered that Alexandra was systematically accessing my research files. She was copying my documentation, my signal specifications, my backtest results. Everything I'd built over 5 years was being harvested without my knowledge." She frowned. "Why didn't you report it?" "I did. I reported it to Victor. Do you know what he said?" She shook her head. "He said I should be flattered that his daughter was taking an interest in my work. He said it was good for knowledge sharing across the organization. And then he told me to stop being paranoid." Rachel's expression shifted slightly, a crack in her anger. "I didn't know." No one did. Because I realized then that I couldn't trust anyone in leadership. Not Victor, not compliance, not the board. They were all going to protect Alexandra because she was family. So I started building a backup plan. The signal generator. The signal generator. I developed it on my own time, with my own resources. I documented everything separately. I built it so that without it, the trading system was incomplete. Functional enough to demonstrate in controlled conditions, but useless for actual live trading. Rachel was quiet for a long moment, absorbing the magnitude of what I was describing. And you've been planning this for 8 months. Not planning the confrontation, planning my escape. The confrontation happened because Alexandra accelerated her timeline. I was going to wait until after the capital raised to announce my departure. But when she interrupted my presentation, when she stood there taking credit for everything I'd built, I realized the timeline had changed. So what happens now? Now I build something of my own, with investors who actually believe in the strategy, not just in impressive pedigrees, and I'd like you to join me. Her eyebrows rose. Join you. You're the best risk analyst I've ever worked with, and you're being wasted at Prometheus, running reports for people who don't understand them. I'm offering you equity, a real piece of the economics, and a chance to build something that matters. Real ownership. Not the illusion of partnership that Victor uses to keep people working for below-market compensation. She stared at me for a long moment. You really planned all of this, didn't you? Not all of it. I just created options for myself, while Victor and Alexandra eliminated theirs. The difference is that I was building toward something. They were just taking things away. 4 weeks later, I stood in the lobby of our new office space. It wasn't much. A converted loft in the financial district, all exposed brick and harbor views. The kind of space that emerging managers dreamed about. Raw and unfinished, full of potential. But it was ours. The sign on the door read, Archimedes Capital. And beneath it, a tagline that made me smile every time I saw it. Returns built on research. Rachel had joined me, leaving behind a comfortable salary and deferred compensation that would never vest now that Prometheus was imploding. She'd made the decision in less than 48 hours. I've been watching you get taken advantage of for years, she told me. Now I get to watch you win. 2 other analysts followed. Kevin, a brilliant programmer who'd been stuck maintaining legacy systems. Sarah, a portfolio analyst whose ideas were always shot down by senior management. Both of them had been invisible at Prometheus. Both of them were ready to build something meaningful. We had infrastructure arriving daily, funded by investors who believed in what we were building. Every Bloomberg terminal we installed felt like a declaration of independence. Every server we racked was a statement of intent. Every line of code we wrote was a brick in our own fortress. The culture we created was everything Prometheus wasn't. No arbitrary hierarchies. No closed-door meetings where decisions were made without input. No credit stealing. No politics. No managing partners' children getting corner offices for made-up titles. Just research. Just trading. Just the pure satisfaction of generating returns that mattered. We had rules, not the kind of rules that constrained innovation, the kind that protected it. Every strategy would have at least 2 people who understood it. Every research finding would be documented and shared. Every team member would have real equity, real ownership, no single points of failure. No one would ever be as vulnerable as I had been. I instituted weekly research presentations where anyone could share ideas. Not to impress management, not to jockey for position, just to make us all better. The team dinners we had felt different too. No one was checking their phone for approval from someone more senior. No one was worried about saying the wrong thing. We were equals, building something together. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. There was one more visitor I hadn't expected. Alexandra appeared at our office 3 days later. No announcement, no appointment, just a knock on the glass door and that familiar face, now stripped of its usual confidence. She looked different, smaller, somehow. The designer clothes were the same, but they no longer seemed like armor. They seemed like a costume she wasn't sure how to wear anymore. I gestured for her to enter. My team watched with curiosity as I led her to a small conference room. "Did you come to congratulate me?" I asked, closing the door behind us. She didn't sit, just stood near the window, looking out at the harbor. Her reflection in the glass showed someone I barely recognized. I came to understand. What's there to understand? You tried to steal my work. It didn't work out. The end. It's not that simple. Her voice was smaller than I'd ever heard it. I was supposed to be the one who saved the fund. My father's legacy. Everything was riding on me. He spent my whole life telling me I was destined for great things. And then I got there and realized I couldn't actually do any of it. So you stole from someone who actually knew what they were doing. I thought I understood it. She turned to face me, and I saw tears threatening at the corners of her eyes. The presentations, the back tests, the factor documentation. I studied everything you created. I thought I could fill in the gaps. I thought the gaps were just implementation details. But you couldn't, because the details are where the actual alpha lives. No. She finally sat down, as if standing required too much energy. When the live demo failed in front of the limited partners, I didn't even understand what was going wrong. I kept running the system waiting for signals to appear, and nothing happened, and I could see it in their faces. The moment they realized I was a fraud, I felt a momentary flash of satisfaction, quickly suppressed. Gloating wouldn't help anyone. What do you want from me? Alexandra, I want to know how you did it. How you knew what would happen. I paid attention to details, to patterns, to people. While you were studying my research, I was studying you. I saw every meeting you attended, every document you requested, every question you asked about commercialization. I knew exactly what you were planning, and I prepared accordingly. She winced at the directness. The family offices are talking to you now, aren't they? I nodded. They won't invest in my father's fund even if I'm gone. The damage is done. Trust, once broken, is nearly impossible to restore. Your father built his reputation on delivering consistent returns. Now everyone knows he can't actually trade without the people he discards. That's a hard story to overcome in this industry. She stood suddenly. I didn't come here for sympathy. I came to understand what happened. Now you do. I stood as well. You can tell your father that I'm not interested in revenge. I'm not going to gloat or publicly embarrass him. I'm just going to generate returns. And that will be enough. As she turned to leave, she paused at the door. You planned all of this from the beginning. No, I corrected. I simply created options for myself, while you and your father eliminated yours. That's the difference between strategy and desperation. I was building a future. You were just taking credit for someone else's track record. After she left, I sat alone in the conference room, surrounded by the equipment we'd purchased with seed capital. The space was small compared to the state-of-the-art trading floor at Prometheus, but it was mine. Every terminal, every server, every line of code represented a choice to bet on myself when no one else would. I thought about the past 5 years. The early mornings, the late nights, the relationships I'd sacrificed, the faith I'd placed in people who didn't deserve it. Had it been worth it? Not the way I'd done it? No. The sacrifice had been too great, the recognition too small. But the skills I'd developed, the strategies I'd created, the resilience I'd built, those were mine forever. No one could take them away. Not Victor, not Alexandra, not anyone. 48 hours after Alexandra interrupted my presentation, everything had changed. Prometheus Capital was in free fall, bleeding talent and assets. The investors were allocating to me instead, and the strategy that could generate consistent returns would continue under my management. The revenge wasn't in destroying Victor or humiliating Alexandra. It was in proving they had never been necessary to begin with, that all their pedigrees and connections and corner offices were just decoration, that the real value had always been in the work, and the work had always been mine. My phone rang. Montgomery again. The family has finalized their decision, he said without preamble. We're prepared to seed you with $75 million, with performance-based additions that could take it to $300 million over 3 years. I closed my eyes briefly, absorbing the magnitude of what had just happened. $75 million. More capital than I'd ever managed directly. More trust than I'd ever been given. There's something else, he continued. Prometheus is being restructured. Victor is stepping back from day-to-day management. Several other family offices are withdrawing their capital. Word travels fast in this community. Let them restructure. By the time they figure out what they're missing, we'll be 2 years ahead. When we hung up, I walked through the quiet office, running my fingers over equipment that represented not just technology, but freedom. The freedom to trade on my own terms, to be recognized for my performance, to never again stand silently while someone else took credit for my returns. Victor never recovered. Prometheus Capital liquidated 8 months later. The strategy they'd tried to run without my signal engine was worthless. The limited partners who had applauded Alexandra's presentation demanded their capital back. The analysts who had watched me leave found themselves updating their resumes. The industry papers wrote about it. Another hedge fund implosion. Another case of style over substance. They didn't mention my name. Of course. But everyone who mattered knew what had really happened. Alexandra disappeared from the industry. I heard she moved to Dubai, trying to distance herself from the scandal. Her LinkedIn profile went private. Her social media went silent. Whatever career she'd hoped to build was over before it started. Victor tried to start another fund. No one would allocate. Word travels fast in this community. And the word on Victor was that he couldn't keep talent. That he let his daughter steal from his best people. That he valued family politics over performance. Some lessons can only be learned through consequences. And me, I'm generating returns that compound year after year. I'm leading a team of brilliant analysts who are finally getting the recognition they deserve. I'm speaking at conferences where people actually want to learn, not just collect business cards. I'm mentoring young quants who remind me of myself, showing them that merit still matters in this industry. I'm doing exactly what I was always meant to do, just without the people who couldn't see my value. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more tales of justice served. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself against someone who tried to take credit for your work? Share your experiences in the comments below. I read every single one. And remember, sometimes the best revenge isn't about tearing others down. It's about building yourself up to heights they never imagined you could reach. The people who underestimate you are giving you an advantage. They're not paying attention. They're not preparing. They're not expecting you to fight back. Use that. Build your options. Create your escape routes. Document everything. Know your worth. And when the moment comes, be ready. Because the people who try to steal your work are never as smart as they think they are. And the people who believe in you, really believe in you, will find you eventually. You just have to survive long enough to meet them. And when you do, when you finally find your people, when you finally build your thing, you'll realize that everything you went through was worth it. Not because the suffering was necessary, but because it made you strong enough to finally succeed. The models I built still generate returns. The team I assembled still grows stronger. The fund I created still attracts capital from people who recognize real value. And somewhere, in an office I designed exactly the way I wanted it, I'm doing work that matters. With people who understand me. For investors who appreciate me. Building a legacy that no one can take away. That's what victory looks like. See you in the next video.